Hello and welcome to another Tackle Zone Quick Pass review. After starting this series with a trilogy of Skaven reviews, I thought it would be good to have a look at something quite different. And here we have one of my favourite games, it's XCOM the board game. So this is a cooperative game for 1 to 4 players, although it works particularly well with 4 people. And one of the things I really like about this game is it's quite simple and easy to pick up. So you don't need to spend 20-30 minutes looking and learning the rules. You can pretty much get straight into it. So let's have a look at what we've got. So we start off with the box art here, and I think this is really good captivation of XCOM the game. I think it presents that great feeling that you've got these shadowy characters effectively silhouetted by this bright light behind. I think the composition of the blues is very captivating, very much in keeping with the XCOM theme. So I think this is a really good way to start the box off. I think this would grab people's attention. And on the back of the box, I think we've got a nice display here as well. So we've got a bit of a view of the things that are inside. We've got the ever important full layout that we can see what exactly it is that we're buying, and then we've just got some nice blurb. So yeah, I think that's a good start. I think people would like that box art. I think they would have some interest in seeing what it's about. So commercially I think that works well to start with. So let's have a look inside. So here we are with the instructions, and as you can see, there's pretty much a list of contents, some initial setup information, and that's it as basically as far as the rules concerned. And there's a reason for that which we'll come on to at the end, but I think that's good, that it makes it nice and simple for people to pick up. So here are the tokens inside, and again I think this is a good number of tokens to have. I think that there's enough variety here to make the game interesting, but you're not overwhelmed with a huge setup. I think some games that I play, although I really like them, it's quite frustrating that you have to spend 15 minutes just getting everything out of the box and setting it all up. Whereas here I think that you have quite a decent number of counters, and again, because this is a 4-player cooperative game, effectively these counters are all owned by individual players. So once you divide this by 4, it becomes a really manageable resource. So let's actually move on to the roles now, because that will make a little bit more sense with regard to what I'm talking about. So we'll just put the main board to the side. So here are all the bits inside the box. I think that, yeah, that's a good number of bits. We will just open up this. And so a lot of the actual game is controlled around these cards. So these 4 cards here are important for showing you just exactly, oh, they're upside down, exactly what's going on. So these are the 4 different roles, and every player effectively just gets one of these, and it just gives you some information around what exactly it is that you're supposed to do. So again, this becomes a little bit clearer when we move on to the actual instructions of the game, which, as I said, I'll come to at the end. But I think this is good. This is nice to have instructions as cards rather than as a single booklet that you then have to pass around between different people. So I think that's a nice reminder for people playing the game. And then effectively these are resources that are given to the players. So here we have the squad leader, and the squad leader gets soldiers, so I think that makes a lot of sense. And then we have the actual commander, and the commander kind of gets 2 of these that he has. Here we go. We have basically some extra money, and we have some officer training. But then in addition to the standard 2 that they get, he also is given one extra one, which depends on the starting location where your HQ is. So that helps with a bit of variety and replayability, because as that moves around to different locations, you get a slightly different game experience. Here we have some for the chief scientist, so we've just got some extra cards there. Here we have the ones for the central officer. So again, nice and simple. And then these are all effectively, this is your research deck. So this goes to the chief scientist, and then it's the chief scientist's jobs. Basically, you draw some at random, and then you decide from your hand which ones you want to try and research. And that's a good way, again, of randomizing it. It gives the chief scientist something to do other than, you know, just rolling dice. It's important to make decisions. And I think I really like the artwork here as well. I think it's quite clear. The cards are nicely laid out. So up in the top left here, you have the success levels. This is how difficult it is to achieve. You've got some nice name, some nice little graphics, and then just a little bit of information around the benefit that it provides. And again, what I really like about it is that the benefits are quite small. I think it helps for the speed of the game if all of these extra benefits you get are easily described in just 3 or 4 lines, pretty much one sentence. I think that's important, rather than, again, just getting bogged down in the rules. So you can see the artwork here. It's quite simple, but it's effective. I think it looks really good. So those are the main cards. Let's now have a look at what else is inside the box. So the next thing that we see inside the box is we have another big deck of cards, and then we have some larger cards as well. So we'll start with these because they're a bit simpler to explain. Within the game, you are trying to defeat the final mission to rid the Earth of aliens. But before you do that, you have to undertake a number of other missions. And so these are the other missions that you have, and these are effectively drawn randomly. And you can see that, considering that in most games you'll play probably 3, maybe 4 of these missions, that's some quite good variety there as well. And then elsewhere you have these final missions. So depending upon what mission it is that you want to play, you are given effectively these as the final mission, and they are unlocked at some point in the game. So again, just having the choice of 5 there, it's quite simple. You just need to print a few extra cards. There's not too much difference between these missions, so you don't need to do a lot in terms of actual design work, but it really adds to the experience to have multiple end missions. Just makes it feel a bit better. And yeah, there's some good nice artwork here as well. Good variety in the colouring between the missions as well, just to help them feel a bit more unique. And then we come on to the final pack of cards, and these perform a dual function. So you have crisis cards and aliens. So the aliens are just a list of enemy aliens, basically, of varying degrees of difficulty. And again, these cards are quite simple. They achieve what they're supposed to do really easily. First of all, you have some targeting options, how tough they are. So again, how many successes you need in order to kill them. And then if they've got any special rules or abilities, that's just detailed below. And again, that's nice and simple, being done in just a few lines. So those people that have played XCOM will recognise all their old favourites. We've got the Ethereals, Cyberdiscs, Mutons, Sectoids, and yeah, some really nice artwork here too. So yeah, they look great. And then for me, this is the most interesting part of the game, which are the crisis cards. So at various points during the game, you will have to deal with these crises. So some nice simple cards, and again, some very, very simple text that's going on. Very quick to read, very quick to make a decision for. So anything from kill 2 soldiers, spawn 2 extra UFOs, increase panic, draw a new one randomly and then play it, kill one soldier assigned to the mission. So nice and simple, nice and quick and easy to deal with. And this again all comes down to the final bit. But first of all, we'll have a look at the board itself, and then we'll check out the final bit, and then hopefully the reason why I love this game will make a bit more sense to everyone. One of the things that I think is also good about the layout of this board is that it makes sense where everyone should sit. So all of the science work is done at the top of the board, so it makes sense for the chief scientist to sit there. Over on the right hand side here, you have the missions that need to be achieved with your soldiers, and also your base to be defended here. So it makes sense for your squad leader that controls your soldiers to sit over that side. Then you have down at the bottom here, this is your your continent panic track, and it's really important to make sure that as the aliens invade, that the continents don't become so panicked that they end up effectively defecting to the alien side. So if 2 continents fall into complete panic and disarray and then they defect, that's the game over. So the central officer controls that. And then over on this side you have the commander, and it's the commander's job to effectively tie everything together, and so they can sit over on that side. So it makes sense where everyone sits, it's nicely laid out, people aren't having to reach over each other, which is really important because this is a time-based game. So when you are trying to make all of your decisions, it is against the clock. And how do we do that? Well, we use an app. So normally there are, there can be issues with app-based games, but this one makes it really important. So here we have the app itself. I can hold it at an angle where we don't get too much reflection. So we can see that I'm talking about, this is the final mission, which is infiltration. It tells you the enemies that you'll be fighting, so you get those out of the deck and just make a small deck with those as the enemies. It randomizes where your HQ location is and gives you the panic levels to start with. So this is all part of the setup, and everyone can just be getting on with their job. And then we get to the time phase. So every round begins with a timed phase, and this is where all the decisions are made. And then afterwards you have a resolution phase where you work out the impact of the decisions. So we'll just run through a bit of a first turn. So you can imagine that all these things are going on the board. So new technology available. This means that the chief scientist would have to draw up to 6 new cards, and that's quite simple. XCOM budget. So one of the jobs of the commander is to make sure that everything done has been paid for, and so they would just take 14 credits. And then the next thing is for the squad leader to choose a mission. So if there's not already a mission in play, they would choose a mission. So you draw 2 missions and you pick the one that you want. So you get a bit more time for this. Next is assigning research 1. So the chief scientist has to look through their deck of technology and work out what they want to assign, and that goes into number 1. Enemy in the base. So the squad leader would draw an enemy card and put it in the base over down in the bottom right here. Crisis. So the commander would draw 2 of those crisis cards that we looked at. They would discard one and keep one, and then the one that's kept goes down in the bottom left here. Ufos Detective. This is the job of the central officer to control the UFOs. So they would put 1 UFO counter here and 1 UFO counter there. It's another crisis. The commander will have to draw another 2 crisis cards, and just as before, throw one away and keep one and put it into the pile. Emergency funding available. So at this point, the commander's also having to work out how much money needs to be spent. So every fighter you put in the air, every soldier that you use, every scientist that you assign costs 1 credit. And if the commander thinks that they don't have enough money, they get a pool of 10 emergency credits that they can draw from at any time. So sometimes you need to do that to make sure everything is paid for. So we have 1 UFO in orbit and 1 UFO in Africa, so it's the central officer's job to put them on the board. And now it's time for the squad leader to deploy the squad to the mission. So they have to draw from the pool of soldiers that they have available and decide which ones need to go on the mission. Now, bear in mind, they don't know if any more enemies are going to attack the base. So if they put all of their soldiers on a mission, it could cause some problems. So here we go, there's another enemy in the base. So more decisions having to be made without complete information. Next is deploy the Interceptors. So now the commander has to put the Interceptors in the air. And well, maybe all the UFOs haven't arrived yet. So where do you do them? Do you spread them out, or do you leave them some UFOs to conquer some certain areas? So you have to make all these decisions quickly. Assign research 3. So now the chief scientist has to, well, they've had a bit of time whilst everything else is going on to work out what exactly they might want to be looking at. So they should be able to make this decision pretty quickly. Now it's on to the central officer to deploy the satellites. So UFOs that have spawned in orbit cannot be destroyed by interceptors because it's an orbit, but it can be destroyed by satellites. So it's up to the central officer to work out how many are needed. And there's more enemy in the base. So yeah, if you overcommitted your soldiers, you're in a lot of trouble now. More UFOs detected. So we've already deployed interceptors, but now we have some additional UFOs turning up. And then we have defend the base. So now it's up to the squad leader to work out how many soldiers are required to defend the base. And then assign research 2. The chief scientist then gets to put that final bit of their research in. And then we have ending of the time phase. So you get about 30 seconds at the end, but if you've done well and completed those other sections faster than your allotted time, you get a bit more time here to spend on this. And this phase is used for extra little bonuses. So the central officer, for example, has an ability to move something around, and other people have some abilities to do things as well, like upgrade troops. So this is all done during the final times phase, and when this timer runs out, you have to stop. So if you've forgotten something at that point, doesn't matter, you have to stop. So we're just going to the beginning of the resolution phase. The first thing that the commander needs to do is audit the budget. Make sure that everything on the board has been paid for. And if you have some leftover money, great, you can do it on recruiting more soldiers and interceptors. So really, you need to anticipate that you are going to lose soldiers and interceptors, and therefore you should be leaving some money left over to try and recruit some more. But if you've overspent, that's a problem, because continents start to move into panic and you're closer to losing the game. And then finally, for the early part of the resolution phase, the commander has to resolve any crises that have been left over down here. So given the choice that was made, you are going to potentially be in a lot of trouble, or maybe you got away with it. So let's have a look now at how the rest of the resolution phase would play out. So the first step of the resolution phase is the science. So here we have an example of how a first turn of science might look. So we've had the chief scientist has put the run and gun ability into number 1, alien alloys into number 2, and then alloy cannon into number 3. And at the same time as putting down the actual technology, they've assigned the scientist. So we've had 1 scientist assigned to the first one to the second, and then because this one is harder, 2 more added to it. Now, when we look at successes, we need to roll dice, and these are the dice that we have for the game. So we've got 4 blue and 1 red. So the blue dice represent whether you're successful or not, and you can see that this token here occurs on just 2 sides out of the 6. So you've got a 1 in 3 chance of being successful and a 2 in 3 chance of being unsuccessful. However, you could potentially be rolling more than one dice. So you roll the same number of dice as you have the number of people that are attempting to succeed. So in the case of this first one, it's just one scientist, so it would be 1 dice, but in the case of this last one, there are 2 there, so you'd be rolling 2. On the other hand, you need to get the same number of successes as is on the top number. So although we get to roll 2 dice for this one, we also need 2 successes in order to complete the research and gain the card. Now, in addition to the blue dice, you also have this red die, and this is known as the alien die, and it's effectively whether you have exhausted your resource. So a blank space on one of these dice means that you're unsuccessful in your attempt, but it's not a failure, it's just a lack of success. And you could, if you wanted to, try and roll again. But this dice, if you roll too low, means a failure. And in order to understand what that means, we need to look at this track as well. So this is kind of like you're pushing your luck. And at the beginning, you put a little counter over 1. So what that means is that when I roll the die, I would roll a blue and a red one together. And if I roll a red one which has the number 1 on, because this here is on track number 1, it means that I have failed, and effectively these scientists here are exhausted and can no longer carry on. But let's say I rolled an unsuccessful result, but I got a decent number on this. I can have another go, but to have another go, I push this counter up. Now, on a 1 or a 2, that would mean a failure, and these are exhausted. Doesn't matter too much for scientists, because scientists tend to, well, they don't die, they just become exhausted, so they taken away and they have to kind of miss a go before they can come back and do some more science. But it's particularly bad for interceptors or soldiers, because they'll actually get killed as well, and you need to re-recruit them. So here we go, let's go for science number 1. So this is, well, that should be at 1. This is unsuccessful, but I've rolled a 2, so that's fine, and I'm really keen on this, and I don't worry too much about tiring my scientist out, so I'm going to push my luck. Let's have another go. And I failed, and I've rolled a 2. So this means that this science is unsuccessful. This counter flips over. We can see that they are now exhausted, and it means I have to stop researching from number 1. But I can move on to number 2. The track goes back down to 1. So let's have a go. Unsuccessful, but a 6. Up to 2. And now I'm successful. So that's excellent news. This means that this has been successfully researched, and it would go to the chief scientist. So the chief scientist would keep this card, and it means that they can place a scientist on there in the resolution phase and place 1 discarded tech card on top of the tech deck. So the final resource in the game are the miniatures themselves. So you can see that I've already got some UFOs on the board. So let's have a bit of a close-up view of one of these. You can see, you know, there's nothing fancy or frilly about it, but it's got some good details. It's not just a flat lump. So they're quite nice. And then we have some soldiers. So you get 4 types of soldiers, but you know, these again, nothing particularly good or fancy about them, but for components of a board game, they absolutely do the job. And here is the sniper. So you know, they look good. They look good. And then finally we have the Interceptors. So again, go to focus. There we go. Nothing special about these, but they got some good detail. Good for what they are. So let's say during the timed phase, the commander decided, well, they're going to try and save Africa. They've got 3 enemy UFOs. Put the counter back to 0. And so let's decide to go for Africa first. Now we have 2 UFOs, which means, sorry, 2 interceptors, which means we're using 2 blue dice, but we've also got this red alien dice as well. And if I roll too low on the red one, it means all the interceptors are destroyed, and for each success I get to remove a UFO. Now if it gets too high on the push your luck track, and I don't want to have to lose all of my interceptors because they would have to be rebought, I can stop at any time, but for each UFO left in the continent it falls into panic by one more space. So we need to be very careful with that management. So let's see how we go. So this is a good start. One enemy UFO has been destroyed because of that success, and that's a 3, so that's fine. Let's keep going. So I've got another success, so that's another enemy UFO. Let's see if we can get the third one off. So pushing our luck here, and yes, that's fine. It's gone. Africa has been cleared. So let's move over to North America. Now I only get 1 die here. We reset the track back to 1. So nothing there. Let's push our luck. Again, nothing. Let's push our luck. It's getting 3 out of 8 now. It's quite tricky. That's again, it's another unsuccess, but we live to fight another day. And I really can't afford to be having 2 panic in North America, so we'll try one more time. Oh, this is looking bad. Yeah, let's go for it. 5 out of 8. That's a high chance of losing that interceptor, but I really need to try and get one of these UFOs down. And that's brilliant. That's 1 UFO gone, and yeah, I was really lucky on that track. All of my interceptors are intact, so they would just go back into reserves to be used again next time. But this UFO will cause some problems as well. So there we go, that was XCOM the board game. As I said, it's really good fun because of that time pressure. I think that's what really makes the game for me. And it's particularly good because you're playing with 3 of your friends. You have to have that good communication whilst under time pressure. And I can see more and more games going in that direction. There's a lot of good computer games, things like Overcooked for example, which puts people under time pressure and having to communicate with each other. Now this game is nowhere near as intense as that one is, but for a board game I think it actually does a good job. And also importantly, it means that the game is completed in a certain amount of time. So the setup is quick, the playthrough is quick. It means that you can get this done in under an hour, and that's really important because you don't there's a trend in modern games I think for them to end up lasting 2.5-3 hours, and even though they've got the playtime on the boxes, this can be done in an hour and a half. 4 hours later you're still sort of hammering it out, and I think it's a bit dishonest, but they want to sell the game because of the complexity of the game. They think that's what people like, having lots of pieces inside, lots of complex rules, lots of strategies, but they don't want to admit that this game is going to take all afternoon. So they put, I think, an overly optimistic time frame on how long the game is to be played. But this one's actually, this one does what it says it does. It's a quick game to play, it's good fun. It's got some really high tension as well, as you could probably guess from the dice. There's a lot of volatility there, there's a lot of swinginess, they're not very unfair. It's been deliberately done that way, I think, to be unbalanced. You could certainly come up with a system of dice that gives you a more average result, but I don't think that's as fun, and in terms of the tension can really build here. And because it's cooperative rather than competitive, people don't really care about the unfairness of dice as long as it delivers a good experience. So overall, I think this is a really good game. Unfortunately, it's very hard to get hold of now. I think it's out of print. Hopefully it's not. Please comment below if you know where to get it from. And we will leave it there for today. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please do subscribe. See you next time. Goodbye. Oh my god, it's an alien. Oh no. Oh. Okay, survived. Okay. Right, let's see. What can we do here? Okay. So, who have we got? A Terry, okay. Oh, machine gun, that's good. So, 9% chance, I'm liking those odds. Come on, Terry. Come on. Come on. No, Terry, what are you doing? No way. Okay. Okay, 10% chance. Yes! Die, alien scum!